So this evening's quote from Swami Kriyanadaji's book Living Wisely, Living Well is for October 17th. Face trials, obstacles and challenges courageously. You are a child of God. As such, you are the equal of everyone on earth. Your potential for greatness, indeed for perfection, is infinite. A painting should be judged not by any mistakes the artist makes while perfecting his work, but in its finished state. I'll read the first line once again. Face trials, obstacles, and challenges courageously. Isn't that so wonderful? So many times we come on the spiritual path only finally, at least subconsciously wishing, hoping, all my troubles will now end. And in the beginning, Yoganandaji said, God makes it like that. There is a very palpable draw we feel. There are special things that happen perhaps in our lives. We intuitively get this sense, oh, something special is happening. I am being divinely guided, especially for one to be drawn to a true master, to a guru, as we all are. Many of us, I'm sure, who are watching this, when we take discipleship, I remember at that time, and we see so many students taking that step, in our centers, and it is so wonderful. People say, yes, I can feel that presence, I can feel that guidance, there are special things happening in my life, and it is all good. Meditative experiences can also come in more than usual abundance at this time. And we take discipleship, and again, the blessings do continue. Now you see, everything is a blessing. Life itself is a blessing, and but then we define blessings as good things that happen to us, good karma, as people say, or God gives us a parking space, or sometimes, Swami used to say, He gives us a big house, or maybe for a center you get a nice space, and we say, Master gave us something, His blessings are on us. Well, after a while, Master said, God starts withdrawing, not His grace, but that special favor, you might say, which that extra push that is required for us to come on the path firmly. Because after that, the growth of a disciple does not depend so much on receiving than it does on giving. Giving up of what? Giving up of anything which is keeping us away from Him. You see, the way Yoganandaji described God, the concept of renunciation, which is the very, you might say, it's a central theme of discipleship. A disciple after a while does not want anything except he wants God, the source of everything, but he wants to give up anything which is in the way and trying to stop us. And I remember this statement by Thomas à Kempis, a great saint, I think of the 13th century, maybe 14th, in Europe. And Master said that he wrote a book, perhaps you've read it, called The Imitation of Christ. And as you start imitating Christ, which was the theme of his life, he at one point, gave up his job that he was doing, the family that he was with, and he felt those were also the dark ages, and there was a much stronger pull in the world, or you might say forgetfulness was more rampant in the general world than in monasteries, or perhaps in remote places where one could take seclusions and think of remembering God more than the mundane realities of life. Life itself actually was much shorter. People used to live 40 years, 45 years. So you might say a lot had to be done in those 2 decades or so of one's productive life. Now, at that time, when he was going through that, he finally took the next step of joining a monastery. He became the abbot of the monastery, and once he was meditating, and his great blessing was Christ would commune with him. And in one of those communions, which he has noted down in that book, The Imitation of Christ, he's saying, Lord, I thought you were very pleased with me when I left job, when I left my family, when I gave up my riches. Now you see, he must have given up one thing after another at that point, because he must be feeling more joy, God's presence and guidance. But then he says, I thought you were more pleased when I joined the monastery. He says, now I see you are nothing. You are not pleased with anything less than the complete offering of my very self. And that oh Lord, is a very difficult thing to give up. Which is to say, what was that? He said, the likes and dislikes that we have. Should I do this? Should I do that? Must I, must everything be done by God's will? And when we start approaching it with that sense, and God is on our side. Master said the Bhagavad Gita was written with that bhav. Krishna was with us, and we should not for a moment doubt that. Nonetheless, it requires courage on every single step. Master was very clear. He said, our trials in life, they come not to destroy us, but to awaken within us this divine sense of solution orientedness, the potential which is hidden inside of us. He said, God wants us to raise our energy, our potential, so we can basically come up to that level of solution orientedness. Can we close the windows? Yeah, there is another shutter. And then, also if you remember, Sri Yukteswarji, Paramhansa Yogananda's guru, he would say that there are no obstacles. He would remind his disciples, only opportunities. That again, when we think we are being challenged, so often, and the easiest thing to say is, it is my bad karma. That's why these things, that is one of the fallacies of knowing the teachings too much, that we start defining them in one category versus the others. But Yogananda ji again was very clear, and he said, that we have to overcome these challenges. I remember one of his quotes was in autobiography, blessed is the man whom the Lord testeth. And then he was telling, I think Dr. Lewis, he said, oh, the Lord has always remembered every now and then to place a burden on my shoulders, which is again, as we know, God never tests us beyond our capacity. But as we grow in discipleship, as we move on the spiritual path, as the soul starts awakening that, okay, if I'm not this body, if I'm not this mind, if I'm not these senses, I'm operating through them, then who am I? So at that time, our tests also become more subtler, more inward. From, you might say, once a monk asked Yogananda ji, sir, why do we live in such comfortable homes and eat food regularly, wear shoes? And he was, I think, comparing with the ancient, Franciscan order, where they would not wear shoes, and sometimes people still don't, on snow and such. And Master said, if you can take what God sends you, he says that is discipleship. That is where your courage is tested. And I think, and Kriyananda ji explained it further. He said, in these times, our tests have become more inward. They are related to, we are in an age of energy. Yogananda ji said this is known as the Dwapara age. We have come out of the age of materialism, the Kali Yuga age, the matter consciousness. And so for outward tests, yes, you can test yourself on those fronts. There is certain benefit. Yogananda ji also advised us to be tough, and he would say, go on fasts once in a while, and again, take a cold water bath or expose yourself to some temperature. And he says, try to develop even-mindedness. He himself would sometimes find the difficult periods astrologically in his horoscope, and he said, I would choose some very challenging projects at that time, and he would set his will, not saying that this is bad karma, oh, I can do nothing about it, but to show that human will, and above all, divine will, which is the grace, you might say, of Guru or God, and Guru, through the Guru, God's will comes. They can raise us, they can uplift us, they can show us that you can overcome these things. But even to face that test, we need courage. And every soul goes through this. That's why these teachings are here. Kriyananda ji would also, I remember, remind us, 2012, he gave a satsang in Pune, and he said, Master repeatedly would tell us, an easy life is not a victorious life. And again, that is something to be kept in mind. That are we trying to avoid challenges, problems, people? What are they in? They are our karma. What is inside is expressed outside, and that's why in the beginning prayer I said, if we can feel joy, if we can feel calmness, if we can feel contentment inside of us, then to that degree all outward tests become opportunities. Kriyananda ji said the law of karma, which in the beginning seems to be like, as if it's beating us up. It is troubling us. Circumstances seem overwhelming. He says, soon the devotee, the sincere devotee, who is moving forward with the tools that he has been given, she has been given, he says they soon start realizing that the law of karma is actually bliss affirming. Every stroke of karma can be turned, can be deflected, can be overcome to attain bliss. And how do we overcome these tests, challenges, trials in our life, whether they're coming from health, whether they're coming from people, relationships? Well, we overcome them first of all by accepting them. So many times, in the haste to get out of this show, we can ignore the simple, straightforward path which has been kept in front of us. Of course, it is a show, it is a dream, but Master said you won't get out of it simply by calling it a dream. He said, while you're in the dream, you have to live it well. You have to make it a good dream and think of it as a game. Think of it as an opportunity. Let's think of it as exactly what we need. That is why, these things reflect in us. We have, of course, been given the supreme blessing of having a guru, of having the teachings of Kriya Yoga, which helps us realize why is bliss the fruit of Kriya? Part of the reason is that it burns up karma. And when we are freed from karma, which in that practice we equate it as energy movement in the spine, because behind the physical reality there is energy, and there are thoughts behind that energy. And Yoganandaji said, when you can learn to control the energy, we can learn to control the reactive process. And so in any given situation, instead of being drawn into it or drawn into despair, people sometimes end their life. It does not help matters one bit. It is like I was once giving a workshop on stress management, and I told people, I said, alcohol does not solve the stress problem at all. And somebody objected. They immediately raised their hand. They said, I'm sorry, but I don't agree with that. Whenever I have alcohol, my stress goes away right away. And that's why I drink it often. And what do you have to say about that? And I said, well, you're partly right. For the moment, your problem will go away. Actually, the problem does not go away. You go away. You lose consciousness, or your consciousness is reduced to such a point that you enter forgetfulness, perhaps you enter sleep. Then I asked this gentleman one question. I said, sir, how are your problems on the following morning when you come back to office? They are just the same. If anything, now we know chronic alcohol consumption it reduces the size of the brain prematurely. Again, what is the brain? It is a representation of our ability to overcome the challenge, the problem, these tests, trials, and obstacles by finding solutions to them. I want to read a beautiful affirmation that Yogananda ji has given. It's in this compilation, How to Have Courage, Calmness, and Confidence. There is a right solution to every problem. I have within me the wisdom and intelligence to see this solution, and the courage and energy to carry it through. I'll repeat it again. There is a right solution to every problem, not just any solution, the right solution. I have within me the wisdom and intelligence to see this solution, and the courage and energy to carry it through. That once it strikes us. Intuition sometimes is the first glimpse we may get to this solution. But then it's very hard to explain sometimes to others, and doubt can enter simultaneously almost. But if it is feeling right, you say, hey, this seems like the solution, then we need that energy, that willingness, that courage to say, I'm going to see this through. And again, we suffer many times on this stage till through repeated failure we say nothing is working. Whatever I thought might help, intuitively we just get to know that it's not going to provide us that solution, that sense of freedom, that sense of overcoming, where we feel bigger than the problem. Like Master said, when worries howl at you, shout back, I am the older brother. Be quiet. Which is to say that how can we again raise our awareness and come triumphant. This is also the center, the point between the two eyebrows for solution orientedness. And it is the center of will. It is now medically called the center of perseverance, resilience. They use that word resilience. Also, no, it's perseverance. It is the center of concentration of our mind. And I want to share now a few stories and then a few tips how to develop this kind of courage. First of all, the Mahabharata starts in the very beginning when Krishna sees the army on both sides. He reflects for a moment, and as we know, he keeps his bow down. They say the bow slipped from his hands, and he tells Krishna, his guide, his higher understanding, I cannot fight. I won't. This does not even make sense. Much better if I die in this process, but I will not fight. Now that is cowardice, friends. That is despair. And what was the bow that slipped from his mind, from his hand? It was the spine, Yogananda ji said primarily, that when we bend our spine. So always remember, and I have tried this many times myself, whenever a challenge comes, a situation comes, can we simply keep a straight spine? It may sometimes, in the beginning it's not so straight, but breath by breath, if we can just keep a straight spine. Then the second thing is if we can start breathing nasally, because this air goes up to the point between the two eyebrows in that direction. And if we can, again, bring the focus at this point, the gaze at this point. These are very simple teachings of Yogananda ji, but I think in the very initial steps, he has given us some foundational teachings also, which can be used and must be all the time. So again, keeping a straight spine, breathing diaphragmatically. That releases, tensions. It brings, this is also the center of self-control. As we breathe diaphragmatically, we draw the energy from the lower three chakras. Now, what does that have to say? The lower three chakras deal with loyalty and firmness, yamas and niyamas actually first and second, and adaptability to a problem. When a challenge comes, you have to sometimes, instead of going for it head on, we may have to adapt. What's trying to happen? The mind has to be kept open. The consciousness should be like, what are we being guided to? What should we do? If a problem is coming? And think of a war situation, friends. It doesn't go as you planned. So many things are changing. The enemy is changing its tactics, and in that moment we have to say, okay, I am firm. I'm not first of all going to run away from this. Then I'm going to adapt my strategy so I can overcome this. And the third chakra is I will gather my energies. Self-control. In Hindi, it's a beautiful word called sanshay. Gathering your energies, lifting them to the heart. At heart, we express fearlessness, courage. All of this mentally, sometimes day after day, we may have to remind ourselves. They are our soul qualities, but they can many times be forgotten in moments of stress, as was forgotten by Dronacharya. Habit. Old habit can tell us, oh, I want to go back to alcohol or go back to sleep, or they say, oh, I will never pass this exam. This has happened to me in the past. Seek the company of those who have accomplished the same. Serve them, interact with them. And as I was saying in the beginning, meditation. Instead of giving into despair, let's say you give into despair for 10 minutes. Why not take 5 minutes, 3 minutes to focus at the spiritual eye? And slowly we see that Arjun's bow, which is in our spine, and Yogananda ji said at our forehead, is again in his hand, his mind is focused, his will has returned, and only then, after our self-effort has been put, then kripa comes, then grace comes. And like I said, some of the attitudes are, we first want to accept the situation as it is. Then we want to tell ourselves, this may require some walking through the challenge, and I want to be calm. I would like to apply some perseverance. I want to be realistic in this approach. Then if we can find ways to be cheerful, for example, if the problem is going to exist anyway, why not laugh about it? And this happens subconsciously to many people in extreme stress. They start laughing. This is because somewhere the body, it was all like pent up, and when the subconscious mind knows nothing can be done now, people have been known to actually do heroic acts. Of course, it's partly happening subconsciously, but they've forgotten, they've given up all fear, The same thing again by our control, I think, can be slowly, slowly done very consciously, where we learn to relax in the problem. And we tell Divine Mother, I know you're testing me. I know you want me to grow through this. I'm not able to find the solution while I'm in the thick of this, but I will give some time. I will try to approach this cheerfully, and I will come on the other side. And who was spared of tests, friends? Only those who have passed them. But for example, our example, Christ also had a difficult life at times. And he would say, Lord, may thy will be done. And then Master said he went through it. He showed us that the physical reality can be overcome through the mind and through the power of the soul guidance, God's guidance, His grace. Divine courage, Swami Kriyanada ji explains, is the ability to live in that presence, to know that He is the only reality. He alone is in the tests, and He has come to test me. You see, again, we are afraid of something inside. That is why it's taking an outward form. And once we can recognize it outwardly, then we can say, okay, I want to live in that presence, and when that presence is inside me, it is inside that test, then I can slowly, easily overcome it. And that's what happens. The moment we express, Master, his guru used to say, look fear in the face with courage. And he said, it will cease to trouble you. So we want to reach that stage. But his disciples, Christ's disciples, they had to face that too when he was persecuted. It was quite untimely if you see it from their perspective. They were thinking it has just begun, their discipleship, their training, their outreach, and their master was gone. And at that time, when he appeared a couple days later, Master said it was the Holy Ghost came upon them. The Om vibration came upon them. When the Om vibration comes, Yogananda ji said, fear cannot exist because the ego to that degree expands, it leaves us. And again, those techniques have been given to us. Again, just to mention, in stressful moments, first it is the breath, then it is the heart that quickly starts getting out of our control. By daily practicing those, or sharpening our blade, you might say, through those techniques, we learn the ability to progressively be calm, cheerful in courageous moments. And then, as Babaji said, those who have expressed that divine courage, he says they are fit to unravel the spiritual mysteries. As Kriyananda ji saying, you are a child of God. We are all children of God. Our potential for greatness, for exploration of not space but of these realms, of the realm of joy, he says it is infinite. Infinite. So on some level we have to, I would say, gear up for that. We have to slowly, we want to ride the balloon of cosmic consciousness, as Lahari Mahashaya would say. And Master said it's okay. When you're jumping in war, you're afraid. He says that's fine. But nonetheless, still go forth. And I was also thinking today, we should be much grateful, express that gratitude for those tests that come to us, because they are showing us cracks in our wall, you might say, in our armor. And we say, okay, I need to work on this, I need to work on this. Because I also realized we can spend a long time simply saying, oh no, it's not my problem, it is their problem, it is because of this person or that. And it's us. If we are seeing a problem, we need to work on it till we can be calm. And in our calmness, in our transformation, we would have done what God and Gurus expect from us. And I'll leave us with this last statement, that when we are in that state of calmness, then our prayers, then our seva, then the thoughts that we receive, I think really become God's will. We are perfectly in tune with Him, and we can serve as an instrument. You might say we really start enjoying the divine skiing that we are doing at that point. But everything else is a preparation for that. Energization, meditation, all the other techniques we learned, daily prayers to God and Gurus, but for others also. And finally, deep, deep devotion and daily communication with God and Gurus. So thank you. May we all be blessed with divine courage as we move ahead on the spiritual path.